It was supposed to be a celebration, but as soon as I walked into the room, I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. I wasn't just the daughter-in-law, I was just a guest. My father-in-law's words rang out, dismissing me in front of everyone. "She's just a guest." The smirk on his face stung worse than the words themselves. Little did they know, this party was about to take a turn no one expected. What happened next? You won't believe who stood up for me and who was forced to bow down. Stay tuned to find out. I had always prided myself on my independence. I came from a hard-working family, always striving to make a name for myself, carving out a life that was all my own. Being married to Dan felt like a dream come true. His family, especially his father, was a different world, one I had to learn to navigate carefully. My father-in-law, a man of high status, had always been distant, often casting judgment with his sharp eyes. But I was determined to fit in. I spent months preparing for this party, meticulously picking the right dress, rehearsing the small talk, making sure I'd be accepted. It was supposed to be a happy occasion, a family gathering, to celebrate Dan's promotion. Little did I know, the night would unravel in a way I never saw coming. As I walked into the grand house, feeling the heavy gaze of every person there, I thought, this is my chance. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The whispers, the stares, they were too loud for me to ignore. The unease in my stomach began to grow, but I brushed it aside, determined to make this night work. Then, without warning, I heard the words I wasn't prepared for. "She's just a guest." My heart stopped. Something inside me snapped. But I had no idea just how much was about to change. The moment those words left my father-in-law's mouth, the room seemed to fall silent. His eyes never left mine, as if he expected me to shrink, to apologize, to make myself small. I could feel the heat rising in my face, but I wasn't about to let this man dictate my worth. I smiled, trying to brush it off, but the sting lingered, crawling under my skin. As I walked deeper into the room, I noticed the shift. The guests, mostly high-powered professionals, shifted uncomfortably as I passed, some pretending not to notice, others avoiding eye contact altogether. It was as if I wasn't even supposed to be there. I felt my stomach twist, the weight of 100 invisible eyes on me, all silently judging. I tried to act normal, but inside, a storm was brewing. The food, the music, the conversations, they all felt foreign, as though I had stepped into a world I didn't belong in. The polite smiles I forced were met with distant glances. My presence felt like an intrusion, a mistake. I caught snippets of conversations, none of them about me, but all of them about me. They didn't care about my accomplishments or my efforts to fit in. They saw me as an outsider, a guest who had no place in their circle. I found a quiet corner, hoping to escape the tension that gripped me, but it only followed me. A few moments later, Dan's cousin, Sarah, approached, her smile tight, her words casual but clipped. "I didn't expect you to be here tonight. You know how they are," she said, motioning toward her father. "But hey, don't take it personally. It's just the way they are." Her words hit harder than I expected. It's just the way they are. So this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was their reality, their normal. And I had just become a part of it. A small, insignificant part that could be ignored, dismissed, overlooked. I felt my hands tremble, but I kept my composure. I was better than this. I had fought my whole life to be seen, to prove that I deserved every inch of space I took up, that my presence meant something. But here, in this house, under these people's scrutiny, it felt like none of that mattered. The anger that had been simmering inside me finally bubbled over. I wanted to say something, demand respect, make them realize that I wasn't just some guest, but I held my tongue. What good would it do? Would it change anything? The night stretched, On, and I found myself sinking deeper into the oppressive atmosphere, a mere shadow in a room full of people who wouldn't even acknowledge my existence. But then, as the night wore on and the tension grew thicker, I noticed something strange. My father-in-law was talking to a few of his business associates by the bar. His back was turned to me, but I could see the way he gestured with his hand, dismissive and condescending, as if I wasn't worth the air in the room. But then I saw it, the way one of the guests, a man in a crisp suit, looked over his shoulder at me, then at my father-in-law. It was a brief glance, but it was enough to make me wonder. Had he seen what I saw? Had he heard what I heard? And then it happened. The moment that would change everything. The door opened, and a voice rang out from the hallway. "Excuse me, miss. We need you over here." The security guard's eyes were fixed on me, not my father-in-law, not any of the other guests. They were on me. I froze. Was this a mistake? Did they think I was someone else? The crowd grew silent as the guard walked toward me, his gaze unwavering. And that's when I realized. The eyes that had once dismissed me were now filled with curiosity. They were watching me closely, waiting. What would I do? Would I bow down and stay in my place? Or would I do something they never expected? This was no longer just about one small incident. It was about everything. The hidden power dynamics, the quiet, relentless discrimination that lived beneath the surface of this so-called celebration. The tension in the room was palpable, and I was right at the center of it. As I stood there, feeling the weight of everyone's gaze, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this moment pass without making a statement. And this was only the beginning. The room fell into a suffocating silence as the security guard approached. His heavy footsteps echoed in the quiet, each one amplifying the tension that had been building all evening. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I refused to show any weakness. Not now. I stood tall as I could, my fists clenched at my sides. The crowd watched, their eyes now fixated on me, their gazes like daggers. The guard's eyes locked with mine, and for a split second, I thought I saw something there. Respect, maybe. But I wasn't sure. Was he going to humiliate me in front of all these people? Or was this his way of trying to keep the peace? I could feel my chest tightening as his voice broke through the silence. "Excuse me, miss, we need you to leave. You're not on the guest list," he said, his tone flat, devoid of any empathy. It hit me like a slap in the face. The words were cold, calculated. He was removing me from the party, not because I had done anything wrong, but because they didn't think I belonged. The world that had just seemed so vibrant, so full of possibilities, now felt small, suffocating. I was shaking, but I didn't back down. "I'm with them," I said, nodding toward my husband, who was standing just a few feet away, watching. I was expecting him to speak up, to defend me, but his eyes were vacant. He looked like a man who had already chosen his side, and it wasn't mine. That was the moment I knew. The man I loved, the family I had tried so hard to fit into, had all quietly accepted this invisible line that separated me from them. It wasn't about being invited anymore. It was about being seen, or rather, not being seen at all. This was my place in their world. The guard reached out, but I stepped back, feeling the room close in on me. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to let them see me break. And yet, here I was, on the edge of a choice that would either break me or change everything. Suddenly, without warning, a voice rang out from the crowd. "Stop!" It was a man I didn't recognize, a guest from earlier in the evening. He stepped forward, meeting the guard's gaze without hesitation. "What's going on here?" he demanded. All eyes turned to him, and for the first time that night, I felt a glimmer of hope. But would he actually do something, or was he just another bystander? The room held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The silence in the room was deafening as the stranger stood his ground. The security guard hesitated, clearly unsure of how to proceed. For a moment, I thought the entire night would unravel in front of us, but instead, the man in the suit stepped closer, his voice steady. "I don't think she's the one who needs to leave," he said, turning to the crowd. "I think it's you." A collective gasp echoed around the room as he made his way to the center of the gathering. The tension that had hung in the air for hours shifted in an instant. The guests who had been silent now began to murmur, eyes darting between me and my father-in-law, as though they were seeing everything for the first time. The truth had come out, unspoken but undeniable. This wasn't just about a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was about a system, a culture, that had allowed this type of racism to thrive in the shadows. It was about the unspoken ways people were treated differently simply because they didn't fit into a mold someone else had created. I was no longer just a guest. I was a person, deserving of respect. In the days that followed, things didn't magically change. My father-in-law didn't apologize, but the dynamic had shifted. People saw me, really saw me, for the first time. I realized that this wasn't just about me. This was bigger than one party, one incident. It was a reflection of something that runs deep in our society, an unspoken bias, a quiet injustice that people like me face every day. But I also realized something more powerful. I didn't need their approval. I had already proved my worth, not to them, but to myself.